Locker Room. Here we are for episode 3 of this season. I'm your host, Jacob Homan. Here I am sitting today with Dylan Leatherwood and Evan Newton, my special guest for this evening. How are you guys doing today? Doing all right? Good?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Good, good. Well, thanks for coming on the show today.
Of course.
As we know, the NFL season has officially wrapped up.
Sadly.
And we are entering into the offseason. Congratulations to the New England Patriots winning their 6th Super Bowl title, tying the Pittsburgh Steelers for the most in franchises in the NFL. It's a very impressive accomplishment.
Did Tom make you say that?
No, he didn't. I promise. But the Pittsburgh Steelers, the fact that I mentioned them, they are in the news recently with their star wide receiver, Antonio Brown, has requested to be traded this past Tuesday. And we kind of saw this coming. You know, a lot of people did with his dilemma with Ben Roethlisberger and whatever has been going on in that locker room. It's been kind of a mess recently. But he clearly wants out of Pittsburgh, and that begins to make us question, you know, where do you guys feel that he'll end up this season, or if he'll even end up somewhere, or will stay with them or not. But I'll ask you, Dylan, where do you think is the best fit for Antonio Brown?
I think he's out. I think the bridges have been burned. He's out. Mm-hmm. And now that leads us to where he's going to go. So Steelers are not going to trade in division, and I doubt they're even going to go in conference. They don't want to see this guy at all. And it's just going to be a reminder to them like, oh, snap, look at all this talent we lost if they keep playing them over and over again. So I see going to the other conference, NFC, and I see the Cardinals.
Okay.
In my opinion, I don't think they want to take that first pick.
Yeah?
I think they want to trade it to the Steelers and get Antonio Brown, get a star receiver.
That's a hot take, son. Holy cow.
And look, Brown's one of those guys, it doesn't matter who's QB. He's going to get open, he's going to make plays, and he's going to be a star. So Rosen, whoever you want, put him out there, he's going to make plays.
I like that.
Wow.
But as we know, though, Antonio Brown's not the only star Steeler player that it's been on the move for the market. Le'Veon Bell, with him being sat out for this entire season this past year, and James Conner coming up under his wing and being the running back that he was this season, I think it's safe to say maybe the Steelers don't need Le'Veon Bell. You know, I think maybe he wants out of Pittsburgh as well. And this thus leads us to question, where do you think Le'Veon Bell could possibly end up this season?
I want to say, when you said that they wouldn't want to see him within their own conference, I think that's more of like a basketball kind of thing, because you play those teams a lot. With them, you still see him maybe like once, unless they're in division, no. But like conference, I don't think it's as big as a deal. That's why I think he's going to land with the Jets, just because you've been hearing it so much. They're all in them, and they're really, in a sense, the only team you've kind of heard be like, that's the guy we want. Like other teams are like, yeah, we'll like kick the tires, but the Jets have been like, let's go, and it's a New York market, which, you know, a lot of athletes really like. So I see that as a good fit for him, and I think with the Steelers, the way that they're set up, that they do miss him in a sense, because at the end of the season, the struggles that they had with those late game losses was because they were trying to play the short game and they couldn't, and that's where Le'Veon Bell excelled. So I think the Steelers are going to miss him a little bit, but I don't think it's going to hurt as much as losing AB.
Yeah, for sure. Moving on to our next segment, though, we'll be talking a lot about football today, because as the offseason approaches
football
us.
is king, baby.
Yeah, right. Interesting thing, though, is that this past year, right now, the top 5 highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL. Not a single quarterback made the playoffs this year.
It's crazy.
It includes Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford, Jimmy Garoppolo, Kirk Cousins, and Matt Ryan. All of them had their own, season with their team. But let's just say, let's say that some of these quarterbacks make the playoffs this upcoming season.
Injuries played a big part in it too, with
Jimmy
2
Garoppolo,
of them. I mean, it was different. It's a different
3.
kind of seasons for him, but still the stat still rings true.
And Kirk Cousins, with the money that he got this year, he had a lot of expectations from Minnesota.
Professional bag thief.
Fortunately, they didn't capture a playoff spot this season, but there's still lots to look forward to. But personally, who do you feel has the best chance to overcome this treacherous season and make the playoffs next year? I'll start with you, Dylan.
Well, Green Bay has 2 first-round picks.
Yeah.
And all they need to get is just some sort of defense, some little sort of defense for Aaron Rodgers to thrive and get back into the playoffs.
Yeah.
This guy is a star. We know he's got an absolute cannon. We know what he can do.
He just needs what Tom Brady always has,
A good system to be around, and they might get that with a new head coach, and also somewhat of a defense, just to be like, hey, stop running. Just something there. Other than that, I kind of like the 49ers with Garoppolo. I think he's a good system QB, and I could see the Rams having a little bit of a tumble. They have so much talent. We're seeing what's happening with the Steelers right now.
Yeah.
They've had trouble handling all that talent. I think it could be the same situation with the Rams, especially how they lost, having not many touches for Todd Gurley in the Super Bowl. I can see a lot of turmoil in that locker room.
Mm-hmm.
I like what you said there about the Packers, and I feel like that's the easy choice out of the bunch just because he's got, you could say, the most experience there. And that's kind of easy to say, but I think with how tough that division's getting with the Vikings and the Bears, and I mean, even if the Lions get their stuff together, that is a tough division. And that's the thing about it, is it's so easy to say, yeah, he's won a Super Bowl, like he'll just climb back up. But that division shown, especially this year, that it's going to be a tough one. And I think with out of all those quarterbacks, Jimmy Garoppolo, he's going to have to play the Rams still and the Seahawks, and that's going to be competitive. And the Cardinals sometimes surprise people, even when they're bad. Like they still have those games. And I feel like with Matt Ryan, that would probably be my pick, just because you don't know what kind of hangover the Saints are going to have, because they've gotten knocked around twice now. This is back-to-back years that they're kind of feeling it. So you don't know how long they're sticking around for. Mm-hmm. And the Panthers are going through stuff because they can never seem to get to click now, especially with Cam coming off injury, and then the Buccaneers are the Buccaneers. So I think Matt Ryan is, with the new talent they'll add, and hopefully get their guys back because they had a lot of injuries this year. I feel like he's got a good shot at it too.
Yeah, well, those are both interesting takes you have, guys, there. But speaking of the Cardinals, they are on the hot seat now with the number 1 overall pick for this upcoming NFL draft in April. Their new head coach, though, Cliff Kingsbury, he's also on the hot seat as well. You know, a lot is gonna affect his decision with how he takes this number 1 overall pick. Interesting thing, though, is that before he was named the head coach for the Arizona Cardinals, he was interviewed, and he was talking about Kyler Murray. They asked him, you know, how he felt about him, because he coached for Texas Tech, so he played Kyler Murray in the Big 12, so he's seen him play. You know, they asked what he thought about him, and you know what his response was? He said he's the number 1 overall pick. He said if I had the number 1 overall pick, I would take it.
There he is.
That is an interesting hot take right there, because as we know, the tables have turned now. Cliff Kingsbury is in charge of that number 1 overall pick. So it's going to be extremely interesting to see how this plays out. But the question is, will he do what he said he would do? You know, take Kyler Murray at number 1 overall, especially when they have Josh Rosen at quarterback. Yeah. What are they going to do with him? You know, like there's so many ways they could go with this. But what do you? I'll start with you, Evan. Okay. But what do you think? Do you think they'll take Kyler Murray number 1 overall, or should they find a different route to go towards?
Here's the thing. Cliff Kingsbury can say, hey, we're going to trade for Tom Brady. At the end of the day, he is not the organization. He is a part of it, but he's still got to sell the organization that chose Josh Rosen and say, hey, this is not the guy, which he hasn't been there to see. The organization hasn't seen that long enough. You would have to sell that completely, tell him that's not the guy. And the thing about, they're in the perfect leverage at the first position because Cliff Kingsbury's never had a draft before with a team. So these teams can't get a feel for him and read it. And when he says, because he came out the other day and said, Josh Rosen is our guy, that can mean something that I think what it really means is he's like, hey, we're okay with sticking for Josh Rosen. I think that they're going to take offers. They're going to listen to see if teams really want it. Yeah. And if teams want it, they're going to start driving up because they're in that good spot. He can say, we've got a quarterback. Like, we're not worried. If y'all want to try to move up here, and if it's not good enough, then maybe you say, hey, we don't have a lot of interest here from other teams trying to move up. We can probably go ahead and get him. It would be not much of a return to trade back, chance missing out on him. So I think that they're going to go ahead and play it safe, especially with his first draft as a head coach. I think they're going to take remind me, it's Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa, that one. I think they're going to take him because he's probably the safe pick, and they don't want to go crazy that first one since they have that piece there.
Right. What do you think about that, Dylan?
Well, I agree. They're going safe. Yeah. First year head coach, you're going to want to go safe. Yeah. It's one thing to say, like, oh, Kyler Murray's the guy, but then when your job's on the line, and it'd be the first time a 5'9"
risk to take early.
Yeah. First time 5'9", 5'10" quarterback would be drafted in the first round. Yeah. Wow. And that's a lot to deal with for your first draft. So I think they're going safe, but I think Josh Allen is the safe pick. And
I get it.
You have Nick Bosa, incredibly talented player, but he has been injury prone the last season. He only played 3 games, and Josh Allen has gotten better with each season and played each season. In his 51 game career, he has not missed a single game.
He's from Kentucky, right?
He is from Kentucky.
So we've seen that up front too. Yeah, we know. I think the combine though, when it comes to these draft guys, the combine for some reason just has a way of blowing things up.
Yeah.
And I think that no matter how much tape they've seen, if they see something they like about him, Josh, I think that they'll be like, okay, you know what, like this is the guy. Like it's not going to take much if they see some measurable that they like. They're like, okay, because the combine's got a knack for that. That's why it's so like revered in the scouting world. It's just because it's guys can shoot up after a good combine. It's crazy.
And the stats are there too. Obviously, combine is important, but 17 sacks in your last season doesn't lie, and also 5 turnovers, forced fumbles. Yeah. That's very impressive.
All right. Well, that does it for our show today, guys. Is there anything else you guys like to add before we leave?
Still that hot take, I'm still like shaking it off. I want about Antonio Brown. I'm trying to get out of that.
You're looking fresh with the collar today.
Dude, I appreciate it. Thank you. I'm popping it up. New man.
I miss the Village shirt though.
Yeah,
I miss it.
It's all good. New man.
In that case, that wraps up our show for this evening. Thank you guys for joining us. And like I said, this is Dylan Leatherwood and Evan Newton. Thanks for joining us on our show today, guys. Really appreciate it. And see you next week, Rockland.